For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to The Gist on Stratnews Global. I am Surya Gangadharan. Welcome to another edition of The Gist. Our focus this evening is on Israel. In Israel, demonstrations against Prime Minister Netanyahu's plans to overhaul the judiciary appear to have taken a breather. But does that suggest his troubles are over? Has he overreached? Is this Netanyahu's last bow? So that's some of the questions we're going to ask our guest here, Dr. Khinvraj Jangid. He's the head of the Department of Israel Studies at Stratnews Global University. Currently, he is in Tel Aviv at Ben Gurion University, where he is researching on India-Israel relations in the context of how the socialists have viewed it, notably Jayaprakash Narayan, Ashok Mehta, among others. Dr. Jangid, interesting line of research. Welcome. Dr. Jangid, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
These demonstrations are unprecedented. Would you say that that's the case?
Well, this is the case certainly after 3-4 decades. Israel is a young state like India, completing 75 years. And in these 7-8 decades, it has been through a lot of political and social changes. Israel particularly has been through many major wars. And in 1980s, there was a big protest against a particular government. But this protest has really been unprecedented because it has touched various aspects of the society in one go. So the number of people from high tech to the universities, to the traditional political opponent parties, left or right, civil society movements, and even some of the very senior personnel of the Israeli Defense Force, they are protesting with others against the current government.
So the presence of armed forces personnel, one would presume they are governed by distinct, discipline regulations and all. But is this mutiny, or it's not seen as such, or it's seen as par for the course? It's strange from an Indian point of view.
Yes, it's neither a mutiny nor a coup. Israeli army is very differently placed in terms of, if you compare it with other places in the world. It's an army which is almost an essential part of the state and the public life. Israel has a conscription law, which means that every citizen serves in the army. Everybody has to give 3 or 2 years, depending on the gender, after they finish their high school. And after that compulsory military period, countless people, meaning millions of people, choose to be part of the reserve force. Now, the reserve force is, part of the regular training, at least a month in a year. And depending on a particular battalion or a particular task, like intelligence or air force, they have to do more regular training programs. In terms of everyday life, there isn't a difference between a civilian population and the army, let's say. Mm-hmm. Because everybody is in a way part of the army, everybody serves in the army, everybody remains part of the army throughout their lives. And this is something that defines the Israeli way of life. It has to also do with the numbers. It's a very small country, just 90 million, 90 lakh. Mm-hmm. And such a small population cannot afford to have a large army of its own, or not have a full force when there are so many conflicts and so many historical wars not resolved yet.
So let's look at the legal issues here. Is it purely a legal thing that is being played out in Israel? Is there something larger here?
Well, we know it from the Indian experiences. Whatever appears legal or political is actually deeply social and cultural at the root of it.
Yeah.
Uh, Political and legal platforms become, let's say, the means through which societies try to resolve their inner contradictions. If we just look at the last 4 years, Israel has been through 5 elections, 5 national elections, sometimes twice in a year. What did that mean in terms of Israeli society and politics? The society is deeply divided, and this has been a deep worry for long in terms of national security. The divisions are various in a very multicultural and a multi-ethnic place. One can assume diversity. But in Israel, there are two major divisions. One between the Jews of the European origins, called Ashkenazis,
Yeah.
and the Jews of the Arab, African, Asian origins, called Mizrahim, the colored Jews and the white Jews. In the Israeli politics, the white Jews were the pioneers. They were the one who launched Jewish national movement in Europe, Zionism. They were the founders, and they have been the leaders, the pioneers, the intellectuals, the administrators, the lawyers, and the judges. And and the Jews of Asia and Africa came later in the 50s and 60s, but they came with, let's say, lesser education or lesser abilities, and they got marginalized spaces. Uh, I'll give you an example. Indian Jews who have been to Israel are various in numbers, but there hasn't been a single member of Knesset, Israeli parliament, from an Indian origin Jew. So Ethiopian Jews, Moroccan Jews, Indian Jews, Jews from Baghdad have been on the margins. Not many in the law, not many in the politics, not many in the judiciary. And that division is a very part of the identity politics. The second division of the Israeli society is about religious people, religious Jewish people, and the secular Jewish people. And that division has been a major manifestation in terms of politics. So the parties that are liberal, universalist, socialist, and democratic have been more, let's say, with the secular Jews. Now, the secular Jews are also religious. It's just that they are not ultra religious. They're deeply cultural. They practice Shabbat, but they don't really, make their choices every day, depending on the Torah or the religious scriptures. So, in the last 4 years, every government was part of this identity politics. And now the identity politics has reached the legal battle. So the judiciary comes into the picture because the current government is of the, let's say, socially and culturally speaking, more from the Mizrahi vote bank and more from the religious pockets of the Israeli society. And for a long time, they believed that judiciary is part of the elite white uh, Jews and their hegemony. It's a bit like Dalits in India, who might say Indian judiciary
Yeah.
is upper caste Brahminical institution. It isn't really egalitarian in terms of its structure and the agents of it.
Yeah.
So that grievance has come up, and they want some reforms. They want to reform the selection of the judges. They want to reform the judicial activism clause of the judiciary. And that has, in a way, scared the other, the more secular, more liberal, and least, let's say, religious. They believe that if the judiciary changes, then they might have to live with laws that won't favor their values. So it's actually a question of who decides what values should govern the state of Israel and its laws, from marriage to food to kosher food, etc.
So, would you say Netanyahu is the unlikely driver of this change? I mean, has he been pro Mizrahi earlier, or is he a recent convert?
He has been part of that Mizrahi revolution. So
Uh-huh.
the Likud party came up in the 1970s, late 70s, and this party used the marginalization of the Mizrahi Jews. So yes, very, very strong, stable political support that Netanyahu has enjoyed over the decades is
Okay.
from the Mizrahi Jews. This time, he got into an interesting alliance with the ultra religious parties. And that's because other more liberal, nationalist, free market political parties chose not to align with him. So he has this unusual alliance because he himself is not a ultra or even religious person. He doesn't even wear a kippah. He's a very modern looking American looking Israeli leader. That's what they call him. He's an American Israeli politician.
So, if Netanyahu is the uh, driver of this change, is there some larger thing happening in Israeli society, or perhaps the Mizrahi growing in numbers?
So it's almost like almost demographically speaking, they're 50-50. I mean, Mizrahi population in itself is something like 30%, but they have other religious and more, uh, conservative white Jews on their side on the issue of judiciary. But the problem, or let's say problem, I mean, we are outsiders. If we look at it from outside and think of it in terms of Asian politics, then what Israel is debating is fundamentally the direction. Should it be more religiously minded governing place, or should it be more Western liberal rational body politic?
Rational.
And that debate is going to be decided by the people, because yes, now the Mizrahi people and the religious people have more political power. They did not have such political power in the past, and hence they want a revision of certain institutions which they think haven't yet converted or gone out of the hegemony of the European origin Jews.
So, can you tell me, the Mizrahi, do they want, say, changes in three, four areas of governance and life? Could you just name them for the benefit of our viewers?
So one of the simple things, I mean, in terms of the Mizrahi Jews and their issues, identity politics is very important. And number of times the court did not take their grievances, which are racial grievances. They have felt
Uh-huh.
that they are discriminated in bureaucracy. They have felt that they are more ill-treated by the police. And yet judiciary did not take their petitions, their legal troubles into more consideration. So they feel that the court is white court and doesn't really think that there is a racial problem among the Jews in Israel. That's a one very, very recent example. Ethiopian Jews have been fighting against the police brutalities. And somehow the court failed to recognize that race is an issue here. The second issue is about the traditions, the cultural issues that the Mizrahi Jews think it's very important. Religion is one of them. Another one is conversion. Many of the Jews who have come from African and Asian places are not considered Jewish enough, and they fight often their Jewishhood, that they are Jewish as the European origin Jews are.
I see. I see. So, has it reached a point where it looks like weakening the entire state structure, the manner in which Netanyahu is going about it? Did he consult enough people?
So what happened? I think the reform, everybody agrees in Israel that there has to be some degree of reform. Not only that the judiciary is considered exclusive and class and identity source, but also the fact that judiciary has overstepped some of its mandates. Israel doesn't have a constitution. Israeli political system is unicameral. There is only one house in the parliament.
Yeah.
Israel doesn't have separation of power because it's a very small state. Everything is decided by the union of the government. In such a scenario, the judiciary in the 90s self-appointed itself as a check upon the executive. Now, in the absence of
Familiar
a
story.
in the absence of a constitution, the self-appointment of the judiciary, that it will work as a check, was welcomed in the 90s. And there was a phase called Constitution Revolution when judiciary really started striking down the laws passed by the Knesset, the parliament. That saturation has now come up to a point of no tolerance, that the executive wants that we are the elected people and courts just cannot dismiss our laws. So the judicial activism is another issue in addition to the identity politics. Has it reached to a point of any resolution? We don't know yet. Right now it's a pause because there was a massive mass demonstration a week ago and country went under a general strike. Netanyahu decided to pause the legislation. By first week of May, Israel will be done with its National Independence Day and Pesach, the Passover celebration. And this is when everybody is anticipating there would be another show of strength. Government will try to come back with the bill. The opposition and the mass protest movement, and these are two different things. Opposition parties are one part of it, but there is a mass mobilization of the people against the reform. In fact, they have been protesting even when they declared pause.
So, given the mass mobilization you've mentioned, across every section of society, has Netanyahu overreached? Has he, pushed? Could this be his last? Has he blundered somewhere?
Well, he's a very, very capable leader who has been, master of power politics within Israeli, political system. He has found himself in a corner, that's right to say, because his own party, the very famous case of the defense minister speaking against the government bill, was the cause of the national strike. And then he fired the defense minister. He fired the defense minister a week ago. And till yesterday, he was with the defense minister as the defense minister because he hasn't given him his dismissal order in writing. The reason he couldn't give it because there is a pushback from his own party as well as the defense, establishment that you cannot fire the defense minister for the fact that he spoke for the well-being and the national security of the state, that he was doing his job. The country is going through a very, very severe crisis, and defense minister's job is to, alarm the bells. So yes, I think he has a very tough political moment. I don't think it will be something that will be, a conclusion of his political career. He's a very, very capable survivor of many crises, and he'll come out well. The point is, how does he bargain? Will he bargain well and make a compromise that will satisfy his own allies who demand a lot, and will also satisfy the high-tech business community, the liberal, the middle class, the nationalist camp that doesn't want really Israel to go only in the direction of the religious sentiments.
So, my last question Is this also seen as Netanyahu's way of getting around his own personal legal issues? He is under a lot of pressure, I understand, in the courts.
Well, that's a very important factor, and thank you for for keeping that in mind. One of the reasons people have been opposed to this reform or any reform to the judiciary by this government is his own trial. That the person is indicted, and because he is fighting his own corruption case, he shouldn't be the person to talk about the judicial reform because it can immediately impact the ongoing
Yeah.
trial. Now, as an optic, it looks really a complicated issue. However, he used the need for the judicial reform. His own political allies have been asking for it for decades, an occasion to show his strength. He himself responded to this allegation just last week, and he assured that any judge that will be appointed after the judicial reform is passed will not get to the trial that's ongoing for his own cases. So he in a way said, whoever judiciary has appointed for his trial, that person will continue, and government will not appoint new judges. But no matter how much he assures the fairness of the trial, the fact that reform is proposed before his own case is concluded in the court is a very, very image issue for him.
I see. Interesting. We'll have to see how this pans out. But do you expect these demonstrations to continue or to pick up after the current pause?
They have actually continued even in the pause. So the pause was a week back, and just this Saturday, 2.5 lakh people in Tel Aviv came out on the protest. Same Saturday evening. They said, well, we will keep protesting till the time bill is not thrown into the dustbin. Meaning there are certain political organizations, civil society organizations, grassroots organizations, they think that pause is just a tactical move. And they fear that the dialogue will not reach to a consensus, and there would be many things to be worried about. So the protest will not stop, and it's interesting. Pesach begins tomorrow in Israel, and it's a holiday for 2 weeks, and then there is a National Independence Day, and everybody is watching about what will be the National Independence Day this year because it's going to be the 75th year national celebration. But I think Israelis will protest with their flags all over the place. By the way, I want to share with you and the audience. So the Israeli, this has become a judicial debate issue, which is impacting many global conversations, and Indian judiciary is also watching it out, I suppose. Justice Nageshwar Rao was in Israel a week back. He came on the day when Israel was under a massive day-long protest, and he spoke in an emergency conference with many other international jurists who came to Israel and talking about the independence of judiciary. So somehow the social and the political issues of Israel have touched upon this issue of judicial independence in many parts of the world. People are waiting to see how Israel will solve this problem in the coming months.
So many parallels there. Dr. Jangid, I guess we'll be revisiting this story in a few weeks' time. And do keep yourself ready for a renewed bout of perspective giving and insights. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Surya.
And for those of you who followed us on this conversation, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter. And thank you and good night.